Hello, and welcome to the Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant Needs Assessment and Evidence-Based Resource Training webinar for the 2025-26 through 2027-28, created September 2024 by your Geographic lead agencies. My name is Anissa Sonnenberg, the Education Administrator of the System of Support Office at the California Department of Education. Today's webinar will be presented by a few of your Geographic leads. So let's get started. The webinar topics being covered today are information about Geographic lead agencies, introduction to the changes in Education Code for the Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant and Needs Assessment, connection to the Local Control and Accountability Plan, definition of evidence-based actions, organization of a workbook of resources, and then we will end with a demonstration of the workbook. I'm now going to hand it off to my colleague, Lisa Gilbert at the Velco Geographic region. Lisa?
Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa Gilbert, Deputy Superintendent of Kern County Superintendent of Schools, and today I am representing the Valley to Coast Collaborative Geographic Area, VALCO. In this section, I will be sharing a brief history of the GeoLeads across the state and our role in the development of the resources that we will be sharing with you today. Geographic lead agencies. Assembly Bill 1808 of 2018 established the California Geographic Lead Agencies, or otherwise known as GeoLeads, to build the capacity of county offices of education, or COEs, to ensure that counties are equipped to build the capacity of their local educational agencies, or LEAs, to support the continuous improvement of student performance. There are 9 GeoLeads across 7 geographic areas of the state that work together to provide the support for county offices, school districts, and charter schools. The GeoLeads also connect COEs and LEAs to the other initiatives within California's statewide system of support. To find your Geographic lead agency, go to the GeoLead Agency webpage on the California Department of Education, or CDE, website to review the list of GeoLead agencies and the counties they serve. This list is located at https://www.cde.sw/SP/SW/T1//CRSS.ASP, or go to the new directory located in the top right corner of the System of Support website, located at https://systemofsupport.org. Here is a map of California and each geographic region. The following is a description of each geographic area. The Far North Partnership geographic area is led by Shasta County Office of Education and includes Butte, Del Norte, Glenn, Humboldt, Lassen, Modoc, Plumas, Shasta, Siskiyou, Tehama, and Trinity counties. The Capital Central Foothill Area Consortium, or CFAC, is co-led by Placer and Sacramento County Offices of Education and includes Alpine, Amador, Calaveras, Colusa, El Dorado, Nevada, Placer, Sacramento, San Joaquin, Sierra, Sutter, Tuolumne, Yolo, and Yuba counties. The Mid-State Collaborative is led by Tulare County Office of Education and includes Inyo, Kings, Madera, Mariposa, Merced, Mono, Monterey, San Benito, Santa Cruz, Stanislaus, and Tulare counties. The Southern California System of Support is led by Riverside and San Diego County Offices of Education and includes Imperial, Orange, Riverside, San Bernardino, and San Diego counties. The Valley to Coast Collaborative, or VALCO, is led by the Kern County Superintendent of Schools and includes the Fresno, Kern, Los Angeles, San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. The Bay Area Geographic Leads Consortium is led by Santa Clara County Office of Education and includes Alameda, Contra Costa, San Francisco, San Mateo, Santa Clara, and Solano counties. And finally, Sonoma County Office of Education leads the North Bay North Coast Collaborative, which includes Lake, Marin, Mendocino, Napa, and Sonoma counties. Resource development. One role of GeoLeads is to identify existing resources, and if requested by the CDE or California Collaborative for Educational Excellence, develop new resources to improve student outcomes under state priorities or other areas of need. GeoLeads were tasked with curating resources and developing training resources for county offices of education and school districts, as well as charter schools, to support new requirements related to the Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant, or LREBG. Resource development continued. As a statewide system of support lead agency virtual meeting, at a statewide system of support lead agency virtual meeting, lead agencies shared resources that could potentially support LREBG related actions. GeoLeads formed a work group to streamline the creation of a needs assessment tool and a repository of resources aligned to the LREBG. The work group developed a collection of vetting process and shared with other GeoLeads to seek input and recommendations. Student-focused support. GeoLeads agreed that all resources contained in the repository must be student-focused and centered on accelerating progress. GeoLeads organized the resources according to the LREBG education code categories to take the guesswork out of how each resource aligns to LREBG allowable uses. GeoLeads included links to associated research for each resource to support LEAs with future connections to their local control and accountability plans. Next, I will turn it over to my colleague, Yi Wan.
Thank you, Lisa. Hello, I'm Dr. Yi Wan, Director of State and Regional Projects at the Santa Clara County Office of Education. I represent the Bay Area Geographic Leads Consortium. In this section, I'll be introducing the changes to the LREBG. Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant. Let's begin by reviewing the key legislative changes that have led to these new requirements. In 2022, the California Budget Act introduced Ed Code 32526, which established the LREBG. The following year, an amendment to this code reduced the original LREBG allocation. In 2024, the California Budget Act introduced new program requirements, mandating that all funds to be expended for the school years 2025-26, 2026-27, and 2027-28 undergo a needs assessment and be included in the LCAP. LREBG needs assessment. Now, let's take a high-level look at the key requirements of the LREBG needs assessment. Any LEA that has received or will receive apportioned funds pursuant to Ed Code 32526D1 is required to develop a needs assessment. This assessment is essential for identifying pupils in the greatest need of learning recovery supports and interventions. The needs assessment includes reviewing specific metrics of performance levels of student groups in English language art, mathematics outcomes, as well as chronic absenteeism as reported on the California School Dashboard. LREBG allowable uses. We will now take a closer look in understanding the various ways LEAs can utilize the LREBG funds. For example, LEAs have the flexibility to extend instructional learning time for the 2022-23 through 2027-28 school years. This can be done by increasing instructional days or minutes provided during the school year, offering summer school or intersessional instructional programs, or taking any other evidence-based action that increases or stabilizes the amount of instructional time or services provided to pupils, or decreases or stabilizes staff to pupil ratios based on pupil learning needs. LREBG funds can also be used to accelerate progress in closing learning gaps through the implementation, expansion, and enhancement of evidence-based learning supports. As outlined in Ed Code 32526C2B, allowable uses include evidence-based learning supports such as tutoring, one-on-one or small group interventions, and learning recovery programs designed to boost academic or English language proficiency. Other uses include early intervention and literacy programs for preschool to grade 3 students, support for expanded learning opportunities, and professional development aligned with the 2023 Mathematics and English Language Arts English Language Development Frameworks. Integrating evidence-based pupil supports to address other barriers to learning, and staff supports and training, such as provision of health, counseling, or mental health services, access to school meal programs, before and after school programs, or programs to address pupil trauma and social emotional learning, or referrals for support for family or pupil needs. LREBG funds can provide access to instruction for credit deficient pupils to help them meet graduation or grade promotion requirements and to enhance their college eligibility. These funds can also support additional academic services for pupils, including diagnostic, progress monitoring, and benchmark assessments of pupil learning. Lastly, LREBG funds can cover the cost of conducting the needs assessment. The allowable use of LREBG funds assist in recovery efforts that support both academic progress and the social emotional well-being of students and staff. I am now passing it on to my colleague, Dr. Tracy Rolfing.
Hello, my name is Dr. Tracy Rolfing, and I am the State and Regional Administrator for the Santa Clara County Office of Education, and am affiliated with the Bay Area GeoLead Consortium. I'm going to talk with you about the connection to the Local Control and Accountability Plan. Connection to the Local Control and Accountability Plan. California Budget Act of 2024 added Ed Code Section 52064.4 to require revisions to the instructions to the LCAP, beginning with the 2025-26 LCAP. On or before January 31st, 2025, the instructions for the LCAP template must be revised to specify that actions related to all unexpended LREBG funds be included in the LCAP for the 2025-26, 2026-27, and 2027-28 LCAP years. The LCAP must identify of all planned expenditures using LREBG funds within the description of the actions and analysis of the implementation of those actions in the annual update. The LCAP must include at least one metric to monitor the impact of each action supported with LREBG funds. With the LCAP, the LEA must articulate the rationale for selecting actions that implement one or more of the purposes identified in Ed Code Section 32526C2 based on the needs assessment required by Ed Code Section 32526D, including identification of how the selected actions are expected to address the identified areas of need for students or schools identified by the needs assessment. With the LCAP, the action description explains how research supports each selected action based on the identified area or areas of need identified in the required needs assessment. I also would like to speak with you about the definition of evidence-based. Evidence-based. Ed Code 32526 specifies that evidence-based has the same meaning as that term in Section 780121A of Title 20 of the United States Code. Evidence-based interventions are practices or programs that have evidence to show that they are effective at producing results and improving outcomes when implemented. The kind of evidence described in the Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA, E-S-S-A, has generally been produced through formal studies and research. Resources included in the LREBG workbook demonstrated in this video are aligned to the definition of evidence-based outlined in the ESSA. Under ESSA, there are 4 tiers of evidence. Number 1, strong evidence, supported by one or more well-designed and well-implemented randomized control experimental studies. Number 2, moderate evidence, supported by one or more well-designed and well-implemented quasi-experimental studies. Number 3, promising evidence, supported by one or more well-designed and well-implemented correlational studies. Or number 4, demonstrates a rationale, practices that have a well-defined logic model or theory of action, are supported by research, and have some effort underway by a state education agency, LEA, charter school, or outside research organization to determine their effectiveness. And here's a quote: "Knowing and building on what has worked in the past, and specifically for whom and in what circumstances, offers a better chance of success in the future." And that's attributed to West Ed's Evidence-Based Improvement Guide from 2017. And now I will turn this over to my colleague, Melissa Bazanos-Hutton, to talk about the organization of the workbook.
Thank you, Tracy. My name is Dr. Melissa Bazanos-Hutton, and I'm the Executive Director of the Assessment, Accountability, and Continuous Improvement Team at the Riverside County Office of Education. Today, I'm representing the Southern California System of Support, or SoCal-SOS geographic area. I'm going to walk through the organization of the workbook. The Geographic leads built the workbook in Google, or a Google Sheets workbook. It is organized in several tabs. Tab 1 contains the instructions. Tab 2 is an area to collect data, a data collection tab for English language arts and mathematics. Tab 3 is data collection for chronic absenteeism. Tab 4 enables an LEA to conduct a needs assessment by school, LEA, and student groups. Tab 5 is an area where evidence-based resources are identified and organized by allowable uses of funds in the Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant. Tab 6 contains links to additional resources. Tab 7 contains the education code for LREBG, and Tab 8 contains the education code 52064.4 related to the LCAP. The next few slides contain screenshots of the workbook. So Workbook Tab 1 contains the instructions. The Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant Needs Assessment and Evidence-Based Resources is the title of the workbook. On Tab 1, we see the contents described, followed by instructions on how to use the workbook, including how to download or make a copy of the workbook in Google. It can also be downloaded into Excel. It also includes acknowledgements of the geographic lead agencies and an acknowledgement of their geographic area partners. And we are also indicating that tabs are numbered to include all of the various elements within the workbook. Next, we're going to jump to the education code so we can highlight why specific sections were included within this workbook. So we're going to show education code 32526 LREBG in tab 7. So next we see a screenshot of what's included in tab 7. This includes, highlighted in yellow, the needs assessment requirements per education code 32526. What we see described in rows 24 through 38 is the required metrics that LEAs must analyze per education code. So when we read through this, this describes what has been articulated in further detail in the other tabs of the workbook. So for reference, LEAs can read through tab 7 for the education code, but then tabs 2, 3, and 4 support the LEA in conducting the needs assessment for these required metrics. We can go back to Workbook tab 2 to see the tool that will support collecting data for our ELA and mathematics academic indicator data for identifying pupils in greatest need of learning recovery. Workbook tab 3, this is a screenshot again of a data collection sheet for collecting data on chronic absenteeism. Workbook tab 4, needs assessment. This is a screenshot of guiding questions that can support an LEA in identifying schools and student groups in greatest need of learning recovery and how they might identify who is in greatest need through a needs assessment. Workbook tab 4 continued allows the district to identify, based on the data they've analyzed, which schools and student groups are in greatest need and which evidence-based resources are aligned to the needs that have been identified. Workbook tab 5 is where the geographic lead agencies have identified evidence-based resources, and there are links, areas that are addressed with each resource, the tier of evidence that is aligned to each resource, and the research base associated with each resource. So again, if we go to tab 5 of the workbook, which we will demonstrate in a moment, we will be able to see evidence-based resources aligned to the allowable uses of the LREBG funds. A few additional notes before we do an overview and a walkthrough of the workbook. The list of evidence-based resources is not exhaustive, nor is it intended to be limiting. It simply provides a list of resources aligned to the allowable uses of funds, but should not be considered the only allowable resources. If resources in this workbook do not address the needs identified by the LEA, then LEAs are encouraged to identify resources aligned to their students' needs. If an LEA has questions about any of the evidence-based resources that are linked within the workbook, it is recommended that the LEA contact the author of the resource. And by clicking on the different resources, it is evident within the resource who is that author who produced the resource that can enable an LEA to contact that particular author. For the final portion of this training webinar, we are going to have a live demonstration of the Google Workbook. And I will be sharing my screen. On the first screen of the first tab of the workbook, as shown before in our slides, we see the title, Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant, Needs Assessment and Evidence-Based Resources. We see the contents, so a description of what's contained within the workbook, the instructions on how to use the workbook, again, step-by-step instructions here, and then acknowledgements of the GeoLeads and their geographic area partners. We then continue on to the data collection tab for our academic data. So data collection for academic performance in English language arts and mathematics. As you recall, this is intended for LEAs to identify their schools and pupils in greatest need of learning recovery. And so we have several options for identifying schools and pupil groups. The first is related to our dashboard data, our California school dashboard data. So we can utilize one option is to utilize a data visualization tool called Tableau. This will be updated with 2024 California school dashboard data once it is published in December of 2024 or late November. And within the Tableau dashboard, which is open on the next tab, we can sort by district or charter school. We can select an indicator, we can select a student group, and then we can select a status level. In the education code for Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant, we have to look at schools and student groups that are at the low or very low status level on the dashboard. So this data visualization tool enables us to sort by low and very low. So by utilizing this tool, we can sort and utilize this to gather data on those schools and student groups. Alternatively, we can use the California School Dashboard, which has been developed and published by the California Department of Education. So this provides step-by-step instructions on how to collect data from the dashboard, including a few visual aids on what the screen will look like when we follow these instructions. It also includes places for us to collect data on our schools and status and change levels. Part B of data collection is about our student groups. So again, options to utilize a Tableau dashboard or the California School Dashboard. And then we move down to part 2, and our requirement in EdCode is to look at scale scores of our students. So we can utilize SIRS data or TOMS data, which again is available locally. So we did not include any links here because this must be done at the local level because it does include student level data. We did include scale score ranges because each grade level has a different scale score range. So we did include a visual of that. But again, step-by-step instructions to support the LEA in accessing the data required to analyze. If we move to tab 3, we have a very similar data collection tool for chronic absenteeism. We can look at schools and student groups that are very high or high on the California School Dashboard. And then if we scroll down, we have an opportunity to look at, we have step-by-step instructions for collecting data for all pupils reported as chronically absent using CalPads. So again, step-by-step, and it enables an LEA to record this information directly into a Google Sheet or Excel file. After we collect the needs or the data, we can then use the guiding questions on tab 4, which is our needs assessment. So the needs assessment has guiding questions to enable the LEA to analyze the data for all of the required metrics that are outlined in education code. So we can look at English language arts data for schools and student groups. We can analyze data in mathematics for schools and student groups. We can look at chronic absenteeism for our schools and student groups. And after we do that, we can use what we've learned to identify our pupils in greatest need of learning recovery supports. Again, that's our mission in identifying, in analyzing all this data, because we can then include evidence-based resources in our LCAP using Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant funds that are aligned to those schools and student groups. How do we identify evidence-based resources? Once we've identified our schools and student groups, we can use tab 5 as a starting point to identify resources that are aligned to all of the allowable uses of the Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant. So as mentioned before during the slide presentation, all of the allowable uses are described in this tab, and resources are linked for each of the allowable uses, followed by the indicator that they address, the tier of evidence they're aligned to, and associated research. Tab 6, finally, this is the additional needs assessment resources and additional evidence-based practice definitions and resources that can support LEAs in identifying evidence-based practices if those practices identified in tab 5 are insufficient in aligning to the needs identified by their LEA. With that, I will stop sharing and turn it back over to our partners at the California Department of Education.
For contact information for questions you have regarding LREBG, please contact the following CDE offices. We have, for the needs assessment resources, the System of Support Office, which can be contacted at System of Support CDE at cde.ca.gov. For interim expenditure reports, you can contact the School Improvement and Support Office at lrebg@cde.ca.gov. And for the LCAP template and instructions, contact the local agency Systems Support Office at lcff@cde.ca.gov. We want to thank you today for listening, and also a big thank you to our geographic leads that presented today, and to all the geographic leads for their work in creating this LREBG resource.